I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had sat me down and said to me when I was young, really said it, honestly, because it took me more than 60 years to understand what I'm about to share with you now. And if you're willing to listen, not just with your ears, but with your life, you might save yourself decades of quiet disappointment. When I was in my 20s, I believed life worked like a checklist. You know the one. You find the right man. You build a home. You look presentable. You raise good children. You stay polite. You don't complain too much. And eventually, you arrive somewhere called happiness. That was the promise. That was the unspoken deal. And I followed it carefully, almost obediently, because I thought that was what a good woman did. But here is the first thing I learned, and I want to be very clear about this. This is the first truth. Nobody tells you that you can do everything right and still feel something missing. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I was responsible. I was supportive. I was there for everyone. And yet, there were nights I would sit quietly after the house had settled and feel this strange emptiness I couldn't explain. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet sense that something in me had been left behind. For a long time, I thought the problem was timing. Maybe I just needed to wait a little longer. Maybe things would feel better when the kids were older, when the finances were more stable, when life calmed down. So I kept going. I kept postponing myself. And that leads me to the second truth. Waiting for life to settle before you allow yourself to feel whole is a mistake that can stretch across decades. Because life doesn't settle. It changes shape. Just when one responsibility ends, another one begins. Just when you think you'll have time, something else asks for your attention. And if you keep telling yourself, I'll take care of me later, you slowly train yourself to believe that you don't matter now. That your peace, your joy, your sense of self can wait. I didn't realize how deeply that belief had rooted itself in me until much later. I had spent so many years being what everyone needed that I no longer knew who I was without that role. And it's a frightening thing at any age to look at your own life and feel like a stranger inside it. Now here is the third truth, and this one took me a long time to accept. Being needed is not the same as being valued. I thought that if people depended on me, it meant I was important, and in some ways that's true. But there's a quiet danger in building your identity around how useful you are to others. Because the moment you stop giving, or the moment life shifts, you're left asking a very uncomfortable question. Who am I if I'm not doing something for someone else? I remember a period in my life when things slowed down. The house was quieter, the demands were fewer, and instead of feeling relief, I felt lost. That surprised me. I had spent years wishing for that space, and when it finally came, I didn't know what to do with it. That's when I began to understand that I had built a life around roles, not around myself. So I started paying attention. Not in a dramatic, life-changing way at first, just small moments. What do I actually enjoy? What do I think when I'm not trying to agree with someone? What do I feel when I'm not pushing it aside to keep the peace? And slowly, very slowly, I began to hear something I hadn't listened to in years, my own voice. Which brings me to the fourth truth. Your voice doesn't disappear. You just stop listening to it, and the longer you ignore it, the quieter it becomes, until you start believing it was never there to begin with, but it is. It's always there, waiting patiently, even after years of being overlooked. Now, I want to talk about something that many women, especially from my generation, were never encouraged to think about: our own worth. Not in relation to how we look or how we behave or how well we take care of others, but simply as human beings. Because this is the fifth truth. You don't earn your worth. You decide it. I didn't understand that for most of my life. I thought worth was something you proved, something you maintained by being kind, by being useful, by not causing trouble. I thought if I did enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, then I would feel enough. But that feeling never came, at least not in a lasting way. It always slipped through my fingers, no matter how much I tried to hold on to it. And one day, I realized something that changed the way I saw everything. The feeling I was chasing wasn't something anyone else could give me. Not a partner, not a child, not a friend, not even a lifetime of achievements. Because it wasn't about them. It was about me, about how I saw myself when no one was watching. That realization didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly. But once it settled in, it changed the questions I was asking. I stopped asking, "Am I doing enough?" and started asking, "Why do I believe I'm not enough?" And that question, that one goes deep, which leads me gently into the sixth truth. The beliefs you carry about yourself will shape every decision you make, even the ones you don't realize you're making. If you believe you are not enough, you will overgive. You will over-explain. You will stay in places longer than you should. You will accept less than you deserve, not because you want to, but because it feels familiar. And for many years that was me. Not because I was weak, but because I was conditioned. Conditioned to be agreeable. Conditioned to keep things smooth. Conditioned to put others first, even when it cost me something I couldn't quite name at the time. But here's the part I want you to hear clearly, especially if you recognize yourself in any of this. You are allowed to change, even late in life, especially late in life. Growth doesn't have an expiration date, and becoming more yourself is not something you missed your chance to do. I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly become a different person. It was gradual, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes lonely, but it was honest. And honesty, I've learned, is where real peace begins. Now, as I move into the next part of what I've learned, what I would call the seventh truth, I want you to stay with me, because this is where things begin to shift in a way that you can actually feel in your everyday life. The seventh truth is this: peace does not come from having everything under control. It comes from no longer needing to control everything. That was a hard one for me. I spent years trying to manage outcomes, trying to prevent problems before they happened, trying to keep everyone comfortable so nothing would fall apart. I thought that was love. I thought that was responsibility. But in reality, it was fear. Fear of things going wrong, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough if something didn't work out. And the problem with living that way is that it quietly exhausts you. You're always anticipating, always adjusting, always carrying more than what belongs to you. I didn't even realize how heavy it was until I started putting some of it down. Not all at once, just little pieces. Letting someone else handle their own emotions. Allowing a situation to unfold without stepping in immediately. Accepting that not everything needs my intervention. At first it felt unnatural, even uncomfortable. But over time, something surprising happened. I started to feel lighter, not careless, not indifferent, just lighter. And that's when I understood that peace isn't something you earn after everything is perfect. It's something you allow when you stop trying to hold the entire world together by yourself. Now, the eighth truth connects closely to this, and it's something I wish more women heard earlier in life. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. For a long time, I tried to be understood by everyone. I explained myself, softened my words, adjusted my behavior, all in the hope that people would see me clearly and accept me. But here's what I learned. When you shape yourself too much for the comfort of others, you slowly lose the shape of who you really are. And even then, there's no guarantee they will understand you anyway. That was a difficult realization, but also a freeing one. Because once I accepted that not everyone would see me the way I hoped, I stopped performing. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped seeking approval in places where it was never going to be given in the way I needed. And instead, I began to focus on something far more important, being honest with myself. That honesty leads directly into the 9th truth. Your relationships change when you change. Some will grow deeper, some will become distant, and some may quietly fall away. That can feel painful, especially if you've spent years building those connections. But it's not always a sign that something has gone wrong. Sometimes it's a sign that something has finally become right. I've had relationships in my life that were built on who I used to be, the version of me that said yes to everything, that avoided conflict, that put everyone else first. And when I began to set boundaries, to speak more honestly, to take up a little more space, those relationships shifted. Some people didn't know how to meet me there. And for a while, I thought I had done something wrong, but I hadn't. I had simply changed. And change, even when it's healthy, can feel like loss. But it also creates space for more genuine connections, for conversations that don't feel forced, for relationships where you don't have to shrink to keep them. And that brings me to the 10th truth. Time is not something you have as much of as you think. I don't say that to scare you. I say it because it's something I didn't fully understand until I could feel it. When you're young, time feels endless. You believe you can always start later, fix things later, say what you need to say later. But later has a way of becoming never if you're not careful. There are moments I wish I had handled differently. Words I wish I had said sooner. Choices I wish I had made with more courage instead of hesitation. Not because my life was a failure, it wasn't, but because I can see now how often I waited when I didn't need to. So if there is something in your life that you know matters to you, don't keep placing it at the end of the line. Don't assume you'll always have another chance to return to it. Sometimes the most meaningful changes begin with a quiet decision to stop waiting. And finally, this is the 11th truth, the one that ties everything together in a way that feels simple, but took me a lifetime to understand. The life you are searching for is not somewhere else. It is built in the way you live each day. It's in how you speak to yourself when no one else is around. It's in the boundaries you allow yourself to have. It's in the moments you choose presence over distraction, honesty over comfort, self-respect over approval. It's not a destination you arrive at one day and finally say, "Now I'm happy." It's something you create, quietly and consistently over time. I used to think that one day everything would fall into place, and I would finally feel settled, complete. But life doesn't arrange itself like that. There is no perfect alignment waiting for you at the end of the road. There is only this moment and the next, and the way you choose to meet them. If I could sit across from my younger self, I wouldn't tell her to do everything differently. I would simply tell her to listen to herself a little sooner, to trust that her worth wasn't something she had to prove, to understand that being a good woman doesn't mean disappearing into everyone else's needs, and to remember that her life belonged to her, even when it felt like it didn't. And if you're listening to me now, at whatever stage of life you're in, I want you to know this. It's not too late to come back to yourself. It's not too late to question the patterns that no longer serve you. It's not too late to choose a different way of living, one that feels more honest, more grounded, more yours. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to make dramatic changes overnight. Just begin with awareness. Begin with one small shift, one honest thought, one decision, that reflects who you really are, not who you've been trying to be. Over time, those small moments will add up, and one day, you'll look at your life and realize that something has changed. Not suddenly, not loudly, but deeply. You'll feel more at home in yourself. And that feeling, that quiet sense of being at peace with who you are, that's something no achievement can replace. It took me more than 60 years to understand these things, and I'm still learning, still growing, still uncovering parts of myself I had set aside for too long. But if sharing this can help you see even a little more clearly or feel a little less alone in your own thoughts, then it's worth it. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening, and for giving these words a place in your time. Take care of yourself, truly, and I'll see you again soon.